Hello and welcome. This is an abridged video tutorial of how to make microanalytical maps in the software program QGIS. The dataset we'll be using today is provided by Benjamin Linsmeyer. If you would like to follow along with the tutorial on your own computer, you're going to need to download these three files from the microQGIS website. We have this pre-referenced image, this tutorial image, and this tutorial data file. Now this is a .tiff extension, this is a .jpeg extension, and this is a .csv extension. And if we open this up in Excel, you can see it's just a data set that was collected off of an instrument, in this case a secondary ion mass spectrometer, and this is delta 18 data that was collected on this particular day. So there's some data that was output by the instrument, there's some data that was that is descriptive in nature that was input by the user, and most importantly we have these x and y coordinates that we'll be using to form the backbone of the map we'll be making in the tutorial today. Now the next thing you want to do after you've downloaded those files is to open QGIS Desktop. Now if you don't have this program on your computer, you can download it from the QGIS project site. The link to that website can also be found by Googling it or by looking at the introduction to the tutorial on the microQGIS website. Now when you open up QGIS, you should see something like this. I've got a record of some past projects that I've run on, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start a new project, a new empty project, which you can go to by clicking on here or by going Project New. And I want to take a moment and orient you to the layout here. So we have a bunch of toolbars at the top that have useful buttons, that some of which we'll be using in the tutorial today. You'll probably have a toolbar on the left here that has a bunch of tools or buttons for importing data. And then on the right you have this layer panel, which will control the order in which the data that we import will display on our screens. Now if you ever find yourself looking for a toolbar or want to clean things up, you can right-click on this gray space up here to access a list of all of the toolbars that are being displayed, or you can go to View, Toolbars, and make changes that way. Now this is a map-making program, and it was designed originally to make maps over the surface of the Earth at the country scale, and it works pretty well for mapping very small samples, but we need to be cognizant of what our units are. So for the purposes of the tutorial and for the purposes of most projects, it makes the most sense to just use an arbitrary Cartesian coordinate system. And so for the talk today, we're going to go Project Properties, and just verify under the General tab that we are displaying our coordinates using an arbitrary map unit. And that is fine. Now, the next thing that we're going to want to do is to fill up this white space with something interesting. So, to do that end, we're going to go to this comma symbol, which allows us to add delimited text files. And we're going to click on it, go to File Name, and this ... button lets us browse to the location of our tutorial data. So I'm going to select that, hit Open, and the program's pretty smart. It already recognizes that this is a CSV file. We want the first record to have the field name, so what that means is that the first row of our data has our field names, or essentially column names. The QGIS refers to column names as field names. And then it recognizes that the column or fields that we've named X and Y are going to be our X and Y coordinates, so we're happy with that. And then I just want to draw your attention to this button that you can check called Watch File. This is useful if you think you're going to need to update your CSV file in the future with, say, a new calibration or something of that nature. We'll be covering this a little bit more in a future video, but for now we'll just leave it unchecked and hit Add and Close. And now you can see that this data has been imported into the map. Now, if you have a mouse and you want to navigate around, you can do so by hitting the Pan Map button up here, and then clicking and dragging around. If you have a wheel button or a middle wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in and out by scrolling that. If you don't have a mouse, you can move left and right by using the arrow buttons and up and down in a similar way. And you can zoom in and out by hitting the Control plus and Control minus keys, or if you're on a Mac, Command plus and Command minus. Now, at this juncture, we have this data set displaying in the map, but the way QGIS is handling this is it's essentially running out and finding that CSV file, reading the information in it, and displaying it in the map. And what we actually want it to do is to save that information as a separate file that we can edit the position information of on our own terms. And so to that end, what we want to do is save it as a shapefile or a .shp extension. So in the layer panel, I'm going to right-click on that layer. I'm going to go down to Export, Save Features As, and under Format, I'm going to select Esri Shapefile, and I'm going to hit the ... button so I can browse to the location of the rest of my data. Now, it's good to always save all of the data associated with a map in the same folder, because QGIS handles all of this data talking to each other through file paths. And so if you ever want to share a map with somebody, or if you ever want to move a map around on your hard drive, having it all in the same folder will keep those links from breaking. So I'm just going to give this a little name, and we're going to hit Save, and we're going to make sure Add Saved File to Map is checked, and hit OK. So now we have that data in our map, and we don't need this data anymore. So I'm going to right-click the microQGIS tutorial data and hit Remove Layer. We're not deleting it, we're just telling QGIS to just not look at it and not incorporate it into the map. Now, the next thing we want to do is to add some images. And so to that end, we're going to need to take the images that we are interested in adding to our map and orient them so that they match the data that we've just imported. And so to do that, I'm going to go up to Raster Georeferencer and open up this little box here. And I need to go find the raster that I'm interested in, so I hit Open Raster. I'm going to go to the folder that I have my file saved in. I'm going to open the microQGIS tutorial image, which is this sort of tan-colored picture here. Hit Open. And now my pointer has transitioned to this little plus symbol. And what I want to do is I want to zoom in to one of these visible Sims pits in the surface. These are these black marks here. And I'm going to click. I'm going to hit From Map Canvas. And this allows me to basically link that point on the image to a point that I find on my map. And so I'm going to hit OK. I added that coordinate. And now I'm going to go and find another location. Let's do this pit down here. And that corresponds to this one. I click again and I hit OK. Now you could do this many times to make a more accurate reference. For our purposes, 2 should be sufficient. We're going to go into Settings, which is this little gear button here. Transformation type is how does the program try and orient your image to the coordinates that you've given it. We're going to go with Helmert, which is a simple rotation and scaling transformation. We're happy with the rest of this information. Use 0 for transparency will make anything that is true black be transparent when the image is uploaded. And we want to make sure we load it in QGIS when the transformation is complete. I'm going to hit OK, and then we hit the play button, like so. And now we can close this. It's going to prompt me if I want to save GCP points. These are useful if you've got multiple images of the same place that are stacked on top of each other. You can save those coordinates to basically reference multiple images in a row. We're not going to do that, so we're just going to discard. And now this file is in our map. Now you'll notice that my points have disappeared. That's because QGIS uses a layer hierarchy, so whatever's on top will display last. And so I'm just going to click that and drag that down, and now my points are displaying properly. Finally, I want to import the third image that we have. That image has already been pre-georeferenced, which means that there is X and Y coordinate information associated with that image, so it knows exactly where it should go on this map. And so I'm going to hit this raster button over here. I'm going to hit this ... button, and I'm going to hit the microQGIS pre-referenced file and hit open and add. Now again, order is very important in the layer bar, so I'm going to click and drag, and now you can see that data is referenced to its location in the map. There is additional information, of course, associated with every single one of the data points that we imported from that CSV file. And there are several ways to view that information. One is with this Identify Features button, by which, if I use it to click on a point, this window pops up with all of the information associated with that data point visible and easy to access. Now, I can't actually change anything here, and the reason for that is because QGIS has a separate editing mode which you need to turn on for any layer that you want to make changes to the underlying information of. And that's to help prevent you from accidentally making changes that you don't want to make. And so to turn on editing mode, we go over to this pencil tool here, click on it. You'll notice all of the fields changed in their appearance, and over in the Layers panel, there's now a pencil right next to tutorial data. So I can go in and change the name of this particular point if I want to. And then if I want to make those changes permanent, I need to then turn editing mode off. And I get prompted by this question, do you want to save the changes to the layer tutorial data? And if I hit save, that change to the name that I just made, that will be permanent. But if I hit discard, it will revert to its original value. And that's again, another wonderful additional check to make sure, yes, I really want to make the changes that I have just made. Now, there's another way to view the data, and that is through what is called the attribute table. You can access this by right-clicking on the layer of interest and hitting Open Attribute Table. And as you can see, all of the data that we've imported is here in that table. And it is sortable. So if I hit the up or down arrows on one of these columns, it will sort in ascending or descending order. Now, say I want to select some features and find them in the attribute table. Well, you can do that using this Select Features tool. So I select those features, they turn yellow, and if I go back and I look at the attribute table, those features are now selected. Similarly, if I want to go and I can select features in the table itself, those will themselves be selected on the map. And if I wish to zoom to a particular location, I can use the Zoom to Selected Rows button, and the map will zoom immediately to that location. These zoom tools are pretty useful if you ever get lost. There is also this Zoom to Layer button, which will zoom to the currently selected layer in the Layer toolbar. And there are also this Zoom to the Full Map button, which will always return you to the fullest extent of your map. Now, Because of some small errors in the stage position, these points are not actually lining up with the centers of each SIMS analysis, and for the purposes of this map, it would be nice if they did. So to change the position of these analyses, we're going to have to turn on editing mode again, click on the pencil, and we're going to click on this Move Features button. So what I can do is I can one at a time click and click, click and click to move each of these points to the center of its respective SIMS pit. Now, if I want to, I can use the Select Features by Area button to select a whole bunch of features at once, and click, click, and those all move together. And just be sure to deselect those features once you're done with the Select Features button by clicking in the blank space in between the analyses, or otherwise they'll keep moving around. And after a couple of minutes adjusting the positions of all of my data points, I need to make sure that I hit the editing button again to toggle editing off, and when prompted if I want to save the changes, I'm going to hit yes, save. Speaking of saving, now would be a good point in time to save the map that we have made. So we go to Project, Save As, and I've named this one My Map, but give it whatever name you want and save it in the same folder as the rest of your data. Now, if you were to lose this map, it wouldn't be the end of the world because all of the other parts of this file have been georeferenced. That is to say, they have their X and Y coordinates of the map in them. You just have to open up a new map, open up a new QGIS project, re-import all of that, change how it displays. So essentially this just saves us a bit of time. And now we can get to the bread and butter of what really makes this program great for microanalytical mapping, and that is how we are able to change the display properties of data. Now you'll notice that as I zoom in and out, the size of the points, or the diameter of the points, scales such that the points are always the same diameter. Well, I don't like that. So what I can do is you can double click on the layer that you want to access, or you can go right click on it and go down to Properties, and this opens the Properties window, and there are a lot of options here. We're going to start with the Symbology tab. Now you'll notice that we've got just a simple circular marker here, and the unit is millimeters. That's not what we want. Remember, we're using arbitrary map units for this map, so we're going to select map units. And I know these SIMS pits are about 12 map units, or 12 microns in diameter. So I'm going to hit 12 there, and I'm going to hit Apply. And hit OK. Now, as I zoom in and out, the diameter of those pits is constantly scaled with the map accordingly. Now, if we go back to this property window, you'll notice up here at the top there's this single symbol drop-down menu. And what this allows us to do is to affect how the points display based on some underlying information that is associated with them. So to start with, we'll select the categorized row. This allows you to change how these points display based on some kind of categorical data that you have associated with them. So if I hit the value drop-down menu, I get an abbreviated column name for each column in my data set, and I'm going to go right to band number. And I'm going to hit Classify. Now there are 6 independent values for these SIMS pits, and the program has assigned them random colors and classified them. And so if I hit Apply, you can see that those colors are now displaying on the map. There's this other option here called Graduated. This is good for graduated data or numeric data that can be put onto a scale. So again, I can go to value, the drop-down menu, and let's choose the delta 018 value on the VPDB scale. And we go down and hit classify. I don't quite like the number of bins, so I'm going to add 5, so we go up to 10, and I don't like the color ramp. Everybody likes a good rainbow color ramp, so let's do that and hit apply, and now you can see that those colors have displayed accordingly. I'm just going to go quickly back to band number for the purposes of pulling all this information together. And now what we want to do is drop down to the Labels tab. So this allows us to label our data. So we're going to hit Single Labels, and let's give this the pit name row. So if I hit Apply, you'll see that a number has appeared next to each of these analyses. Now that's kind of hard to read. So if I go and I select this background option, I click Draw Background, it'll draw a rectangular background around each of those analyses. So that's pretty useful. There are additional things that you can do. So if I wanted to label this with the delta 18 analyses again, that data is there. And say I only want to show one significant digit. There actually is support for that in this formatting option. I can check the formatted numbers button, hit 1 decimal place, and as easy as that, all of those numbers have changed. Now, there's lots of other options here in this table. There's lots of other options just in terms of labeling. You can do function-based labeling if you so wish. That's all beyond the purposes of this tutorial here, but this is a very versatile and useful tool. So apply and OK. We come now to the final part of this video tutorial walkthrough, and that's using what's called the print layout tools to generate nice figures. And there's a few reasons one would want to use a built-in figure generator in QGIS rather than taking, say, a screen grab of this area here and editing it in another program. And I'll show some of those features here. So to get a new print layout, we go Project, New Print Layout. It'll prompt us to give our new layout a name. I'm going to call mine Map 1. And what we get now is this window for the print layout of Map 1. So if we want to add a map to this layout, we click the Add Map button, click and drag a box, and it will immediately fill that with the currently viewed area in the main map. And so if we want to adjust exactly where that display is, we go up to the Move Item Content button. You can click and drag around. You can also zoom in and out if you have a scroll wheel, or if you hold down Control, again on Mac Command, but on Windows Control, if you hold down that button and scroll, you get a finer zoom in and out. And so that works pretty well. And we can add a scale bar to this map by just hitting the Add Scale Bar button. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to adjust the shape of this a little bit. And over here on the right are all of the properties I can edit for that scale bar item. And I'm going to add a background and a frame around it just to make it easier to see. Now, you'll notice that it says this is a 100-kilometer region. And again, this is why we need to be very cognizant of what our units are. And in this case, we're using arbitrary map units. And those units are equivalent to micrometers. So that is that fixed. Now the very nice thing about doing it this way is that this scale bar is now linked to this map. So if I select this map and zoom in and out on it, you'll notice that the scale bar adjusts accordingly. And that's a very, very useful feature to have. Now you're not limited to having just one map on one of these layouts, so I'm going to create a second map over here. And this one I'm going to have be an overview map. And so I want to show where on this area this map location is. Now I don't like having those numbers displaying in the map, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select this map over here, and I'm going to go down to this button, Lock Layers. I'm going to hit Lock Layers, and I'm going to hit Lock Style for Layers. So that basically means that however layers are displaying in this window, they cannot change now. That still means I can move things around, but any changes that I make to those layers in the map, in terms of how they display, will not reflect in the map. And that's useful because I'm just going to turn the tutorial data off so it does not show up. And now if I click on this map over here, you'll notice that that data has disappeared, and that's because these layers are not locked. Now, so that's pretty nice. I'm going to add another scale bar real quick. We're going to make this one be in millimeters. And so to do that, we're going to select arbitrary map units again, and we're going to add a multiplier of 1,000 because again, there's 1,000 microns in a millimeter, like so. Now, the final thing I want to do is show which area on this map is being represented by this area here. And so the way I can actually do that is I can go down to this overview option, and I can click the plus button to add an overview, and I'm going to click map 1. And you can see that this little red region has now appeared on that map there. And if I indeed select this, and if I zoom out, that red region is going to expand and contract accordingly. Now there are a lot of other things that we can do in the print layout to improve the appearance of these things and to expand the capabilities. You can generate appendices using something called the Atlas Generator tool. We're going to go into that in a future video, but for now, that's the tutorial. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope it was useful.